Welcome back to Legacy of the King. In Chapter 4, our hero Drake continues his journey, facing new challenges and selecting his disciples to prepare for the ultimate battle. Join us as the adventure unfolds. Chapter 4, Selecting Disciples. Muscles ached with each pull of my head over the bark, separating from the center. Sweat flowed down my face, slipping into my chest. I was called a voracious boy. Heaving my upper body onto the branch several yards above the earth, I noticed the web of leaves masking the glow of the Circle of Braves, a small, thick forest surrounded by tall evergreen trees. The center inlaid a vast savanna, bright flowers growing on the edge in bunches. Looking up, the sun shone down with great might at noon, giving the grounds a blessing as if God were looking upon the tribesmen. It was a place where huge wolves would morph from the best and strongest Indians of the tribe, a place of strength. Here, I lived, and I was supposed to be protected. But the idea of protection seemed like a faint awareness of my strength. People evaluated me on a level that was below my own standards, the queen. From youth to now, I have had this story sung in my head. I was the one to kill her, to stop her essentially. Chief Bakunawa was my teacher and would provide training to get me ready for the task I was destined for. The old chieftain's lineage could be traced all the way back to the chosen one whose skill was to morph into the wolf. This legacy had been passed down generation by generation. Now it would be passed to me, though I knew that this was not my real skill. It was the skill I would be taught just in case I could not discover my birth skill, the spirit animal I was born with. He said I had to go about finding out my history to solve that mystery. Well, for now I should go back to the schoolhouse. One jump sent me a good distance, foot flat to the raising dust. I waded off the beaten track and cut through the short tomato patch. Within minutes I reached the schoolyard only to get curt nods from the other children. Teens, some younger ones waving at me. I was 10 right now, my birthday within 2 weeks. I could only think vaguely about the idea of growing older. Many celebrated, but with me it never felt so customary to do that. I mostly get bored on birthdays. The warriors and the chief would give me well wishes out of respect. Naturally, I would get respect from the other tribesmen and women, children too, but it was all a formality. Hey, Drake. I turned to receive Apala with his messy black hair, ogling at me with sulky eyes. The bell echoed loudly as heads turned to its sound. Apala glowered. Hey. Apala interrupted me. Man, I wish I saw you earlier. What? So Daska has the new pineapple cheesecakes out today. I was looking for you. I like those cakes. The tender sweetness of the pineapple to the overflow of sumptuous cheese nestled in cream. Damn, tell me you bought one for me at least. Yes, but while I was looking for you, I got hungry again and... I'm sorry, man. I could not resist. Blast. All right, it is all good. We should go back in... Why are you laughing? Apala was chuckling, trying to suppress the sound of his behavior. His hand slipped into the fringed pouch on the side of his hip. Lo and behold, a triangular object wrapped with black cloth. One finger throws aside the edge to reveal the cake I desired. Apala, you sneaky. You should have seen your face. At least I had Apala. We would end up causing mischief, but at least it broke from the norm of training. I could only smile at him. Granted, he was a typical warrior. He would have to become one of the Circle of Braves to become my disciple. It was weird to say that, but Chief Bakunawa said I should choose disciples to help me fight against the Queen, counseling me on what was to happen and told me to find others, so we may train together. It was my 9th year when I found him. It made training bearable. I could laugh at my failure with a friend. He was a year older than me. We always challenged each other both mentally and physically. Apala was a boy who strived to become strong. In combat and effort, he could not surpass me. But I admired his will to work. I admired that about the tribe. Strong, always ready to defend their people and their pride, I fit in well with this philosophy. Apala and the other warriors inspired me to meet new challenges and helped me strengthen my mind. Originally, he was not within the Circle of Braves. He was merely a student, learning at the school when we both met. But Chief Bakunawa had him brought in, tested, and trained. The initial testing is grueling. A journey had to be undertaken where the applicant had to travel alone with only a knife and the clothes on their back, from where we lived in Oregon to the top of the North American border and back. A test of fortitude, tolerance, and determination. Being a brave, as they were called, was all about that. Power was insignificant to people like us. Sitting in my seat, Apala came to his seat as Azazel, my second and last disciple, came in with a flurry. Right behind the other girls, she sidestepped them in haste. Azazel stopped in front of me, and I immediately tensed as she ogled me hard. No, it was the cake she was staring at. Chestnut hair, blue eyes, her cheeks a rosy flush of brown skin. Her clothing today was more traditional. The long hide dress tightened with a belt, her figure allured as she stood tall. She was very pretty, I must admit, a good height of 6 feet. It was funny when I look at her. She never seemed like the warrior you would expect, albeit minus the thick muscles of her limbs, you would never pick up on it. But none of my disciples had that look that shouted strength. They seemed normal. I preferred it that way. At least I can leverage that to evade detection by the queen if it comes to that. You bought one, she spoke slowly. Yes, well, I mean Apala bought one for me. Oh, okay, that's good. She opened her mouth with fingers resting under her chin. She shook her head as she drifted from me to the side, her eyes avoiding me somewhat. She shifted past me quite suddenly as the class teacher stepped in and the lesson began. It was my 11th birthday, in fact, that we met. There were no celebrations or cakes and presents to be had, but in the midst of training, I saw her then a brown-skinned girl serving the circle of braves, watching as she defended herself from one of the braves, a random inappropriate touch to dishevel her, it seemed. She was quick, though, guarding against her assailant. She drifted away as the brave smiled at her. She continued on her way without as much as a rebuke. My head swirled immensely. Dwindling on the ground, I shook my head. The brave I was sparring with ogled down at me. Drake. He began, unable to form the words, it seemed. I winced a bit as I stood up quickly and aptly bowed in respect. Sorry, I was distracted, I shamefully admitted. Distracted, Drake, you know better. Yes, I did. But I could not shake what I saw. Who would take her for a lowly servant and not a person? I sensed she had been mistreated by several of the braves, as well as the tribal elders for a long time. She must be alone in this world, being so neatly outside the pack. I went to ask Apala about her. Apala, who is that girl? He flexed his eyebrow into an inquisitive arch. Azazel, she is an orphan. Both her parents worked at the hydroelectric plant. They were killed in some kind of accident, so she lives with one of the elders and is taken care of by the tribe. Why does she serve them and take such abuse? I asked. Abuse. They are just playing with her. It is nothing big. She is directed by the tribal council to serve the tribe to compensate for all the things the tribe does for her, he told me. Like what? Like food, clothing, shelter, education, all the things a mother or father would do for their child. The tribe does for her, and in return she serves the tribe, Apala said flatly. Thoughts had me wondering how she really felt. The dedication it took to live this type of life. The hurt she must feel within her soul being treated this way. The fear each day must bring her and the lonesomeness of no family. No one to be there for her. Strange that I would be feeling all of this, but then again, I knew my parents were out there. The chief said they knew I was here, but they were not here. They did not stand beside me. So, how do I serve the tribe for everything they do for me? I was not sure, but I decided to point her out, and the circle of braves became silent. You there? Will you join me? Her head snapped around and looked at me. No spoken words, just a look. A look that said she would do anything to leave this life behind. The chieftain immediately spoke out. Drake, she is but a servant and has no right to claim a place of honor. So the bias traveled far and crept deep, it seemed. I looked at the chieftain and replied, You told me to select my disciples and to weigh each one with my needs, confidence, and dedication. I have done so and will not change my decision. Present her to me and prepare her for training. The chieftain then stood, looked at her for a long time. No one moved. When he moved, it was towards her, looking her in the eyes and then taking her hand. He brought her to me. Drake, I present to you Azazel, daughter of Brock. He was one of the circle of braves before he died. So, to honor you and him, I present to you your second disciple. Training will start tomorrow if she accepts this honor. I spoke in a soft tone, looking directly into her eyes, and again asked Azazel, Do you accept this honor, or will you return to your place in the tribe? It was a very easy decision on her part. She stood taller and stated her answer, I accept this honor. Drake. I stiffened as laughter erupted with the call of my name. Apala gave me a disappointed look, it seemed. If you're done daydreaming, could you please give me the timeline of the Elam Empire's rise and fall? Clearing my throat, I began to think of something I only vaguely remembered. Great, I should have studied more. The night cold blew, freezing my doubt, my legs pumping the frustration into long strides. Apala was running ahead of me as Azazel was somewhere in the congestion of trees. We would run around the forest's edge and try to avoid falling as the roots and bushes gathered like dust on the surface. Training was the next thing. We trained at night. No, it was not a wolf thing. Most braves train at all times of the day. We specifically had to because of school in the morning. Every day we trained, and we still had to go to school every morning. Saturday was the only day that felt like a day off, really. School was out. But we still had to do light training. Wednesday and Saturday being the only days we did light training. Heavy training was for the rest of the days. To train my skill, training was specific to that, but it was hard and packed. I had a limited time, and as such needed to do as much to learn the skills of a wolf before the queen rises. The chosen ones before me only had one skill. I would have two. This would be the first time a chosen one had two skills, and Chief Bakunawa was worried over this. Chief Bakunawa wondered if this would change the balance of power to my advantage, or give the queen another possible power or skill. Or would she be stronger, larger, and more vicious? I could not be sure myself, but we would have to wait and see, being prepared for all the possibilities. The circle of braves was abundantly filled with beasts that would keep me from roaming too far. I was provided with all the animals I could devour when the passion overtook me. Because as of now, it still had not shown itself to anyone. No one knew what my true form was to be. Not a soul could keep up with me in my spiritual form back then. The chief told me he had his best warriors shadow me only to lose me in the forest and then be found woken up in the morning. They could not remember what happened to themselves. Could I have done that back then? The chief had to admit the real beast inside of me must be a fierce one if no wolf could track me. But since I have learned to become a wolf, it has been better for me. I would just eat when I was hungry. I do not let myself get too hungry, otherwise my true form might kick in. Before I know it, I find myself awake around a bunch of bones with no memory of the last few hours. I think it took me 3 years to learn this skill of becoming a wolf. The long days of training were hard for me at first, from sparring with wolves to the meditation and long travels into the mountains. It was a matter of heart and belief, setting in my heart the vision of my wild nature. Once attained, I would speak to the spirits in nature directly, trying to gain their fidelity and pacification. That was what the meditation was for. The spirits will come to me more as I train with them, run with them, and fight. Fusing my heart with the spirits was the next step. Attaining a sense of longing, I can entice them to me. Once they fuse with me, their abilities become a part of me. From there, I can assimilate them temporarily to transform into a wolf. With the strength of the spirits enabling me to transform, the strength of my heart defines the amount of power I exhibit. Chief Bakunawa told me I will grow more powerful in time and with practice. Though he did warn if I lose heart, my power decreases, so confidence and belief in myself were important. Sometimes I wondered about that, whether I was as strong as I could be. The idea of strength in my heart felt alien to me. Even though I nodded my head back then, I was not exactly sure what it really was. The training lasted several hours with the moon peeking out behind the bland clouds. Man, you are nimble as always. What is the score now? 426-2, Apala asked.
Yep.
We stared at each other. Apala cleared his throat. Do not start gloating, Apala asserted. Hey, easy, I never even considered it, I retorted. But I might as well, he was keeping score. And I was being reminded how much more powerful I was compared to everyone else. Why even bother remembering your losses? I never cared to remember how many times I won. Mostly because I knew I would. Apala cut his eyes to the side as Azazel appeared, landing from a tree branch. Hey guys, Azazel waved at us. I raised my hand as Apala turned to leave. I need sleep. See ya. Apala morphed into his wolf form, a wash of blinding white. He looked majestic under the twilight. Apala left us there as Azazel continued to gather some fruits for herself. She was determined to eat her fill before she went home. Me, I was tired running for hours. I was told humans could not do such a feat. It is only with the wolves in our hearts that we can go this far. To think humans were so weak. A thud shook my thoughts. I looked down to my left to see a piece of deer meat as the deer's head was staring me dead in the face among the dissipating dust. Eat, I am sure you are hungry, Azazel said lightheartedly. I smirked. Well, she was not lying. You always take care of me, thanks. She sat down on a bark and dug into an apple. Go on, eat. Looking at her, then the slab of deer, I could reason it could wait a while. Nah, I am good. You should go back, I can rest here. Drake, okay, sure, oh, but before I go here. A wrapped package, quite pretty with all those shapes and mixed colors. She must have got it from town. Even though anyone could leave the village with ease, many did not. It was not a fear as much as an understanding of the dangers of the modern lifestyle. We learn early on that for all the good comes a lot of bad when it concerns urban America. Azazel, being an outsider, was already broken into that life. She always voiced how boring the Warm Springs village was compared to Dant. I suppose I could agree, but I liked the normalcy of being here. How would I know anyway? I had never been to Dant, that I could remember. I took it and unwrapped it, and to my delight, it was a pineapple cheesecake. I wanted to give it to you back at school because I knew you would be training. I didn't want to, though, when I saw you with the piece of cake Apala had already given you. But after thinking on it, I decided better you think me silly than uncaring. So here. What a crazy girl. Thanks, I appreciate this. And Azazel? What a crazy girl. Thanks, I appreciate this. And Azazel? Yes. Always be forthright with me. It is better for you to be silly than silent. She smiled brightly and nodded. With that, she left. But I still had one more thing to do. Morphing to wolf, I devoured the food. I needed to replace the energy I had just used, so my inner spirit wouldn't be forced to come out. It took another hour to finish eating, but once I was done, I slept. I would need to be up and about soon enough. It was close to sunrise, but still dark when I awoke to the sound of Apala running around the forest as if sleep were non-existent. He was always trying to outdo me. I can't blame him, but I did wonder if he would surpass me at some point. Actually, I didn't see why not. As a disciple, I train you, and as the apprentice, you should strive to surpass the master eventually. I dozed again, but the morning came quickly, and what little sleep I got was enough for me to carry myself throughout the day. The tribe wasn't completely removed from society. It was just that they operated by a different set of rules. The Warm Springs Indians kept a tight lid on behavior as they held their children to a higher standard than modern society. Responsibility was paramount here, and I would have to reflect this concept throughout my life. To protect this world, I had to accept my responsibility. By learning the ways of many different cultures and the knowledge they accumulated, I was supposed to grow wholesome, as a ripe orange, bright and sweet in its interactions. I had no problems academically. Actually, I excelled. The tribal council and the people of the tribe had faith in me and accepted me without question, feeling proud of my progress. The fight with the queen, though, could be right around the corner. That was the fight that would determine everyone's faith. They prepared themselves as much as I prepared myself. It was to be a fight that no one could afford to lose, and it may take all the strength of the tribe as well as my group of disciples to win. So, seeing Apala striving to be better than me was a comforting action. If I fail, he can carry out the mission in my absence. Azazel was skilled, but she never stood out, at least to my recollection. Maybe I should help her advance more. The chieftain would come before us on the day before I become anew with age. It is time each of you learned of the world. You will need to know the world to prepare for the coming of the queen. But most of all, Drake, you need to find your ancestry and complete your group of disciples. Was I getting kicked out? I realized I still had my original spirit animal to find. I had thought if I trained hard enough, I might discover it. But being among humans who lacked the power of the Braves, I felt I was less likely to find it. I questioned the decision. Chief Bakunawa, I am not ready. I have not trained in my true skill yet. The reason you have not discovered your skill as of yet is because you were adopted as a child. Talk with your parents. They will start you on your journey. They will set you on the path from the beginning. Remembering I did have parents, I felt more eager to leave. Not for my ancestry, but to discover my birth. Apala, Azazel, and I left the tribe, embarking on the tough trek through the forests surrounding the town of Dant. Once we were inside the little town, Azazel guided us, as she was the most familiar with Dant from her days of living there with her parents and running errands for the tribe. It was a narrowing thought that I had parents. I wondered what they were like. I'd been so young I couldn't remember. Were they like the chief, strong and powerful? Were they really weak? Was that why I was taken so long ago? No, that cannot be it. I had a destiny. If that was the case, then spending time with my parents would bring me nowhere, I was sure. Now that I was returning, a part of me considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I was never desired by them. 64 Halewood Road. This would be it, I uttered. The house was a two-story house, dusty but sleekly painted white. The brown shingles worked well with its image. Hugging the sidewalk, Apala and Azazel beside me, I breathed out slowly. A knock on the door, we waited. A blonde woman, eyes as blue as the sky. She was wearing a long skirt and a fitted shirt. She did not have my dark hair and rough features and pronounced chin. Within a split second, she frowned at us. "Hello," she uttered. "Hello," I replied, looking deep into her eyes. I remembered seeing her with a man. They would come to the reservation and visit with the children during school. It had been a long time since I remembered seeing them. Then I asked her, "Why did you not tell me I was your son?" The woman's face morphed into a steady rising shock as her eyes opened more. She threw the door open. "Drake!" I nodded nervously at her, and she lunged at me with enthusiasm and tearful glee. I held on to her, reluctant and confused by her mannerisms. But I accepted she had not seen me for some time, so of course she would miss me. A man came around to see what the commotion was. His face was arrested with joy. His smile was rosy. His dark hair and eyes seemed to connect with mine, but his chin was normal compared to mine. I was not sure, but maybe he could be my father. We were invited into the living room. It was a mix of brown shades from the dark-colored sofa to the lighter blend of the chairs, where we were introduced. Selin wavered her hand towards us, as Michael stood near the door leading into the kitchen. Father and mother, their smiles a tender reminder of what they knew as parents. The feeling of seeing your boy as a man was not something that could be put into words. But I would not know. I had no child to compare. "Drake, I'm so happy. All of you please sit down," Selin said. Azazel sat on the couch hesitantly, while Apala kept standing. I also took a seat on the sofa. Selin positioned herself beside me and hugged me again. I was starting to get weary of the affection, but said nothing. "Drake, it is good to see you again." Michael and I looked hard at each other then. I peered at his posture and form. Michael was fit, not as muscular as a brave, but relatively strong for a man. Inside the collar of my shirt was soaked from Selin's tears. I shivered at the river overflowing. Selin cried as Michael told me of the adoption. "Drake, it was part of the agreement that we would never discuss your heritage. At this point, we think it was because they knew who you were and were hiding you from the Queen. Yes, now it is my task to search out the people who know my past and try to defeat the Queen." The others listened intently as drawn into a web. I needed to know my ancestry. If the Queen came before I assembled my disciples and learned my skills, I would surely surrender the lives of the good to the evil ways of the Queen. I knew I would need to educate myself, while keeping myself hidden for as long as possible. My disciples would follow me. All I needed was time and a clue, really. Michael, my adopted father, told me all he could remember from Mr. Pendragon to the adoption hearing and my mother being some sort of royal figure. They were not sure of which one, though. "So England is the best place to start. From there, we should be able to find something," I said well enough. "Can we not stay here and learn of your history?" Apala asked. "That is where I was adopted, and I think it would be the best place to start," I told everyone. "Well, why don't all of you stay here until you leave? I'm sure you are all tired," Selin jumped in. "Yes, that would be a good idea. Mother." Selin got excited, making high-pitched sounds, resorting to hugging me again. "Selin, stop suffocating the boy," Michael said. "Michael, shut up. I have not seen my boy in a very long time. I do not want to hear anything from you. If it was me, I would never have sent my son away. Unlike you." Michael looked away, but his eyes didn't hide the scorn. I felt uncomfortable now. After all these pleasantries, I was then ushered up the stairs and into my room that had been waiting for me for so long. The crib, an old remnant of itself, was still here. I did not remember it. I realized I must have been a child when I left this house. Apala and Azazel also got their rooms. Azazel made herself at home while Apala engaged me in a discussion in my room. "Nice place," Apala said flatly. I flexed my mouth in wonder, then I rolled my head in tiredness. "You have something to say?" I asked. "Not sure, should I?" I shot a firm look at him. "If you feel insecure with me, it is best to leave my presence. You should not even think that after all we've been through." "True, but the situation is different." "Oh, how so?" Apala shrugged. "Just do not stray from the goal at hand. Everyone has their hopes on you, remember that." Drake smiled. "Never." Apala nodded and left, but I was not happy he thought I had to be reminded. Every day for 12 years I was reminded. To forget was not in my nature, even if someone wanted it to be. The night came quickly enough. Food was served, and Selin made a big effort to impress, much to Apala and Azazel's happy stomachs. I took it with appreciation, knowing this was my first interaction with a family. Even if they were my adopted parents, it was a good moment that lasted like a stretched-out musical note. to find comfort in someone who was just happy you were alive. Everyone went to bed except Michael and me. On top of the roof, Michael looked out on the prairie, me by his side. Even in short bouts of silence, we were happy. Michael and I talked about the training, life on the reservation, the chieftain, and any other random thing that felt right to talk about. But I had to know. Michael, do you regret sending me away? He did not look at me, eyes staring deeply into the sky. No, I want to, but who am I kidding? We could not handle you. You were different. Too different for you? I asked with a bit of sorrow. Michael looked at me then. The difference between us is small. That does not affect how I feel about you. At the end of the day, you had a destiny, so you had to go and claim it. That is why we visited Warm Spring School, but we never tread further than the chief's hut. We would ask about your progress, visit, and leave. We did not want to bother you in training. We did not want to have you decide not to go and do your duty. As a man, I understand that Selin wants to, but she wants her son more. But if push comes to shove, she knew she would rip you away from there within a heartbeat. So we told the chief to keep information about us from you. Sorry, we thought it was best. Sometimes when I think of it, especially when I was younger, the weight was heavy. I almost never wanted to get up every morning. To face against the queen sounded daunting. If it makes you feel any better, son, your mother might kill you with her little arms long before the queen ever will. I was laughing. My chest swelled to the rigor of the joke Michael dispensed. Michael continued, your mother and I will be beside you whatever you want to do. I know, I said aptly. It was all right. My parents were happy just to see me. I wondered if I would win against the queen. Rubbing it out of my mind, I listened as Michael talked about the simple life of the world they lived in. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this chapter, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more updates. Check out the next chapter and the previous chapter by clicking on the thumbnails. Follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes content and updates. See you in the next adventure.